Welcome back everyone to another video. Today we'll be taking a look at STALKER 2 on the RX 6800 XT. We'll look at different settings, best upscaling to use, and this video could also act as a potential sneak peek at what a PlayStation 5 Pro version could look like in the future. Who knows? But we're going to start with 1440p and then work our way up. For starters, we'll leave the graphical settings maxed out on Epic native 1440p, and we're using FSR native AA for anti-aliasing. Normally, whenever I look at the 6800 XT or 3080 Ti for that matter, I use my Ryzen 5900X PC, but because this game is so CPU heavy, I ended up just going with the Ryzen 7800X 3D, so we don't run into any CPU limited scenarios. Now speaking of the 3080 Ti, briefly, we just hit a pretty big stutter there. It was actually getting a little bit more FPS, although not much. I think we were getting around 60 FPS if we look at this footage I took from the previous video. Same exact settings, but using DLAA. Although it looks like the 6800 XT's frame time is a little bit smoother, which actually is something that I've noticed with Radeon GPUs that tend to have a bit smoother frame time in this game. But anyway, I digress. Back to the 6800 XT. I'd say that this more or less qualifies as a 60 FPS experience, but we have options. We can go ahead and use FSR, which I actually don't really recommend. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but there's other things we can do if you wanted to stay at native resolution, is we could try knocking down the graphical settings a bit. I stand by what I said, that Epic graphical preset can have diminishing returns, and having tried the high graphical preset in STALKER 2, actually game still looks really good, and you do get a nice jump to your performance, right? So we gained exactly 10 more FPS, which is a pretty nice jump. Now we're at around 60 FPS, no problem, and the game still looks great. Now personally for me, I would like to ideally get at least 90 FPS, ideally, but I still feel that I could enjoy any game at 60 FPS. And unfortunately with STALKER 2, it is a fairly CPU demanding game. So unless you have the best of gaming CPUs, it might be difficult to hit that 90 FPS without using frame generation, that is. But anyway, we can take a look at upscaling. We should be able to get close to 90 anyway. All right, so since we're already on FSR, let's go ahead and drop FSR to quality. We should see a pretty decent jump in performance here. And we see a pretty big gain actually. We jumped to 90 FPS. So that's almost around a 50% gain in FPS. But this is where I began to notice some issues with FSR, because this is really the first video that I truly dive into it. So look at all the grass and how unstable and flickery it is whenever you move the camera. That is pretty distracting in my opinion. And since YouTube compresses the footage and sort of blurs over the finer detail, let's just zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. But I wasn't sure if it was because we're upscaling or is it just like an FSR thing. And if we go to FSR native AA actually, you will see that the same thing happens. You still see that flicker and it's quite unstable. So I would not recommend using FSR in this game. We have better options. What I did was I took a look at TSR, which has been designed to work with Unreal Engine 5, set it to ultra quality, and set the resolution scale to 65. That should be very close to what FSR DLSS quality would be. And you also have the option to change the resolution scale to whatever you want, and it looks cleaner. I don't know if any of you guys saw the Digital Foundry coverage of Silent Hill 2 on the PS5 Pro and the update who destroyed the image quality because PSSR wasn't doing a very good job. And then the developers released a hotfix where they went back and removed PSSR and went with TSR instead, and it cleaned up the image real nice. And this is a very similar example of that as well, because TSR has been designed with Unreal Engine 5 in mind and actually does a really good job. One thing you could also do if you wanted to is check out the Epic graphical preset with TSR. I mean, since we have the headroom here, why not check it out? And then we can also take a look at FSR frame generation, because overall it actually works pretty good in this game. So going from high to Epic, we do lose a little bit of performance. We go from the mid 80s to the mid 70s, depending on the area. I guess the FPS can vary, but it still feels very good to play in my opinion, and the game looks fantastic, absolutely. But anyway, why don't we go ahead and take a look at FSR frame generation. So look, we did drop a little bit further down into the mid 60s here, maybe because we can see further down the map, but that's okay. We should be able to get a lot more FPS here with FSR frame generation, which actually works well in this game from what I've experienced. And that takes us to around 120, and if we look at the sky, to 160 FPS.
Shoo, Granny. Let me get some sleep.
I don't think so. Go to sleep. Granny shot you in the face. Oh boy. Well, yeah, guys, we're getting. It looks really smooth. It's not. You're not going to be able to see it on YouTube, obviously, because it's at 60 FPS. But FSR works really well here. The game feels extremely smooth, and you know, obviously, FPS is going to vary a little bit. Like we're at the top of the pipes, right? We did drop a bit into like the mid 60s from mid 70s, and here indoors, like even with frame gen, we were up to like 150 per high. So that's going to vary, but obviously on the VRR display, it looks really nice. But anyway, 1440p 6800 XT crushes it still on every game that we've tested. What about 4K? Can we do 4K and have it run and look good? I think so, but let's check it out together and see exactly what we can do. Okay, so I moved over to my LG C1 OLED TV, and we're going to be targeting 4K, and I'd like to start with just native 4K. I'm still using TSR Ultra Quality, but 100% resolution scale, and the Epic graphical preset. And I like to do this just out of curiosity to see what we get, what we start with. And there you go, guys. A console-like 30 FPS experience. But hey, at least it's native 4K, maxed out graphical settings. That's actually not too bad for those that would like to play at 30 FPS, but not me. So let's go ahead and see if we can tweak this to at least get close to 60, shall we? Well, let's start by upscaling. Obviously, that's the easy way out usually for developers too these days, it seems. But we'll set resolution scale to 65 with TSR. And the Epic graphical preset, well, yeah, we're still not hitting 60 or all that close to it. We seem to be around 50 or so FPS. And guys, I have to say, this game looks so atmospheric. I don't know, I guess some people say that the game doesn't look very good, or when there's thunderstorms like this, it looks so atmospheric. But anyway, let's go ahead and try knocking down from the Epic to the high graphical preset here. Give the game just a chance to catch up. And yeah, now we're actually a lot closer to 60. Now I've noticed sometimes when you make settings change, the game sort of like chokes up a little until it catches up. So we are getting a couple hitches here, but it seems to be settling down. And now we're at the very least much closer to 60. I would actually say this more or less qualifies as a 60 FPS experience. I mean, as long as there's no drops below 55, I'd say it's a 60 FPS experience with VRR. It feels and looks really nice. But I think we can probably do a few more things to make sure that we're at least at 60. I don't know if I want to knock down any more graphical settings, but what we can do is lower the resolution scale. And we're going to set it to 56% and then upscale using TSR. And look at, now we're closer to 70 and the game still looks very nice. Especially at 4K, you can actually go with a bit more aggressive upscaling because you have more of a resolution to work with. So obviously it's going to work better. And yeah, this is actually a very nice gameplay experience. Look at the frame time. It's actually been very smooth, no problem. And we still have FSR frame generation in our pocket. But before we do that, let's see if we can make some further tweaks. Basically, my recommendation would be leave the graphical preset to high. The game still looks really nice. And now we can try to increase the resolution scale to 61%, and that should keep us very close to 60. Again, the game looks really nice this way, and we do actually stay pretty close to 60. You could try the Epic graphical preset, but I think that's going to force your hand to have to use more aggressive upscaling, which, hey, at 4K, that works. It works better than it would at 1440, obviously. But I think this is like a good happy medium for a 60 FPS experience. And then you could also use frame generation to take it up a notch. Now, I'll be curious to see what the developers do with the PlayStation 5 Pro version when this game comes out on PlayStation, I think 3 months from now or so. Because PlayStation 5 Pro should technically be somewhat close to the 6800 XT, right? So I feel the devs should be able to provide a very clean looking 60 FPS 4K experience, in my opinion. But yeah, guys, as you can see here, TSR 61%, high graphical preset at 4K 6800 XT. Well, very nice 60 FPS experience, I have to say. But hey, we have FSR frame generation we can throw on top for an even smoother visual experience. So let's go ahead and try that, and we'll wrap up the video. And here we are, guys. The settings I recommend: high graphical preset, 61% resolution scale. We throw FSR frame generation on, and that takes us to 100 FPS. Now, here's another good one to talk about. So FSR frame generation, right, has a GPU cost. If you remember, previously without frame generation, right, we were getting around 60, 65 FPS. Now we throw frame generation on and we're getting 100 FPS. But half of those frames are real, half are interpolated, right? So you're basically losing 10 real FPS as far as latency, right? And you're sacrificing that for a smoother visual experience. Now, whether that's worth it, that will depend on you, obviously. But this does not feel technically as responsive as 60 FPS does. It would feel more responsive as 50 FPS, if that makes sense. But anyway, just kind of talking about little things that maybe some of you may not know that I think is perhaps worth mentioning. But yeah, guys, I guess to wrap it up and give my thoughts on this whole experience, the 6800 XT actually was just a little bit slower than the 3080 Ti when I took a look at that, but it's still a very capable GPU. Obviously, at 1440p, you could play the game native with the Epic graphical preset. Throw TAA on. Don't use FSR native AA because FSR introduces a bit of flickering and inconsistency here. TSR actually works much better, and you can use it for upscaling as well, and it'll give you very similar performance to what FSR does as well. Now for 4K, you will have to make some bigger sacrifices, although I don't feel they're really all that big. High graphical preset, the game still looks excellent, and drop TSR upscaling to, I recommend 61% for a 60-ish FPS experience, or drop it to 56 or even 50 if you want to hit 70s of FPS. Then you also have FSR frame generation, but I will be actually curious to see what the developers do with the PlayStation 5 Pro. I am curious with the PlayStation 5 Pro because it's, it's a custom architecture, and on paper, it's just a little bit weaker than the 6800 XT if the up to 45% claim is to be believed and taken at face value. I feel the devs should be able to provide a very clean 4K 60 experience with the tools that I've examined here on PC. But yeah, overall, man, I think if you bought a 6800 XT when it came out, or even now if you can find it, you were able to find these for around $350. And I think it's still an excellent GPU, has plenty of VRAM for the road ahead, and at 1440p it crushes everything. At 4K you have to make some sacrifices, but still very capable. But that's going to be it for this video, guys. You leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And yeah, I think that's going to be it for this video. I will see you on the next one. Please like the video, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and leave feedback down below. I really do appreciate it. See you next time. Peace.